This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast.
Motor?
It's pronounced MOTAUR.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz.
And I'm Gil Adler.
Before we get going, we'd like to remind everybody, if you are enjoying what we're doing, and God, we hope you are, please hit the like button below, just down there. Hit the like button and subscribe. These things really, really help us. So subscribe, like, do all those things. Thank you so much. Today, our guest is a guy named Patrick LUMB. Now, I'd never met Patrick before we did the interview today. But Gil and Patrick worked together on Valkyrie. Patrick is a production designer and a fascinating person who's living a fascinating life. Even the way that you ended up working with him on Valkyrie had a story to it.
Yeah, it was a pretty sad story on one level, and it was pretty crazy how we finally had to let the production designer go, and luckily had Patrick to step in.
You know, it is something that happens when you start to make a movie or a TV show with your creative team. You expect, when everybody signs their contracts and you start having your production meetings, that everyone's on the same page. It does happen where you discover that one of the people in the group is not on the same page as everybody else, and that becomes increasingly problematic when they resist getting on the same page.
And it's sad all the way around. It's sad for the person you're letting go, and it's sad for you because you don't like to do that, and it's also not in the best interest of the production.
It is never fun to be fired.
No.
It's never fun to fire people. It's everything about it is just unpleasant.
But Patrick's career spans advertising, movies, television, and more advertising.
Yeah.
He brings an interesting perspective.
He absolutely does. And we'll let him speak for himself. Here's Patrick. Brooklyn, Los Angeles, and Lucca, Italy.
Yes.
Now,
constantly on the go.
But all right, Lucca, Italy. When I saw that you lived in Lucca, and I thought, oh, wow, okay, what's so special about Lucca? Wow, Lucca's really a special place.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
What first drew you to Lucca? Because the more, I mean, I the first part of this conversation, I want to know about Lucca, because what a fantastic place. It's beautiful.
Gil's been. He can tell you about it.
It's great. It was beautiful. Their place is gorgeous and very historical and right in the heart of everything. And it was great. We went to a liquor store. Remember this? We went to this liquor store, and we go into the liquor store, and the guy knows Patrick, and he says, "Oh, come with me." And we go into the basement, and there are bottles in sand sort of scattered all over the place, like 100 years old, 200 years old.
Yeah, it's amazing.
What first drew you to, of all the places? All right, Italy, I understand. It's a beautiful place. It's fascinating. But how did you end up in Lucca?
Well, it's quite a good story. So I actually went there when I was 18 or 19 with a college trip I studied at art school in England, and we went there for I think it was like a half a week or a week, and we went to Florence because obviously all the museums, the Uffizi, etc., and the Renaissance. So and I fell in love with Italy. I was like, this is amazing. And back then, Europe was so different to England. England was its own country, which it is again now, post Brexit. That's my political.
Alas, yes.
And then, but it was so different, and it was before the internet, and before you could get like a cappuccino or an espresso or anything Italian. If you wanted any of that stuff, you had to go to Italy. So this was one of my first trips abroad, and we went to Italy, and I was just like, this is the coolest place ever. I want to live here. Plus the art just blew my mind. So years later, Nancy and I got married, and we tried to move to Italy, and a very long story with the QE2 crossing, hitting a rock, traveling late, almost dying on the crossing, arriving in Italy. I had a job to teach at the university there. And by the time I got there, they'd given the job to somebody else, obviously, because I wasn't there, and I was 3 months late into the semester. So we packed up bags and ended up going back to London.
It's like the Odyssey, literally, and with the boat trip too.
Yeah, great. Yeah, totally. And then cut to several years later, one of the movies I did, we ended up shooting in Italy for for a little bit. We were scouting in Italy, and I was like, oh man, yeah, Italy, I got to live here. I love it. Nancy came over to visit while we were shooting and said, right, we're moving here. And I was like, oh, yeah, sure we are. And then we went back to LA, and Nancy said, right, we got a month. We're either doing it or we're not doing it. So we're like, okay, let's do it. So we packed up the house and moved over there. Didn't have a clue where we were going, and spent about 6 weeks driving around with a 7-year-old, our youngest son, in the car. Yeah. And then we didn't know what to do. We ended up going back to Rome, and friends in Rome gave us a list, compiled a list of like the top 10 places if you could live anywhere. And Lucca was on the list. I think it was number 3. And we ended up going to other places, and I'd be like, I love it. And my wife would be like, I don't like it. And then she'd like it. I didn't. We walked into Lucca and we just loved it, fell in love. I don't know if it was Lucca or whether we were just exhausted from traveling. But
were you looking in other places in Tuscany?
Yeah, no, I love to surf. I'm a surfing mad. So I was trying to find somewhere close to the sea, but close enough to a city that wasn't, I mean, I love Rome. Rome's, I think, my favorite city in the world, but it's just another city. And that's why we were leaving Los Angeles in the first place. So, and at the time I was just doing movies, and I never did a movie in LA. And my wife's from LA, and she was like, I'm stuck in LA. I don't want to be in LA. And you're swanning off all around the world. Yeah. So let's just go and live somewhere else. And at the time we could. So that's why we ended up going there. And then just loving it, and put the kids in school and end up staying. So
in the Perini Journal, you said that you could summarize Lucca in 5 words. You remember the words?
Oh my God. Now you're asking.
Well, but they were an interesting choice of words: inspiring, serene, profound, mysterious, and beguiling.
Oh wow! I'd stand by those all.
Cool. Good to know. Good to know. At the same time, in the same publication, you said of Hollywood that it is immense, competitive, glamorous, seedy, and addictive like a drug.
Yeah, all true.
When did you first go to LA?
It was another accident, fortuitous accident. I came to America in '89 to apply to do my postgraduate at the Chicago School of the Art Institute. And I stopped off in Chicago. Well, I actually stopped off in New York for a night by accident because my plane was delayed, which was fantastic. I still remember clear as day coming up on 42nd Street and just being like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like it. Hence the New York thing now, because it's always been a dream. And then I went to Chicago, applied, and then I had one buddy in America who I'd gone to college with, who was in LA. And I'm like, you know what, I'll just stop in LA. I didn't know anything about LA, wasn't even on my radar. New York was what I thought I wanted to be. And I thought I'd stop in LA for a few days, buy a car, an old Cadillac, like all English people do, and then drive across America. But I got to LA and got off the plane, and this friend of mine said, he was working as a graphic artist for a clothing company, fashion company, and he couldn't take time off work. So he picked me up at the airport, brought me back to his work. So I was sitting around in his office, and the boss came in and said, I hear you're a painter. I'd love some paintings for my offices. Could you do them? So I was like, well, yeah, that'd be great. Amazing. I got a job. So I stayed and did some paintings that turned into more paintings. And then pretty soon after that, met my now wife and stayed. But I did go back to Chicago the following year because I was fortunate enough to get a full scholarship. So
excellent. In your biography, you say that you moved to Scotland at the age of 9. If my English wife was here listening to your accent, she'd say, oh, well, he's from, before you went to Scotland, where did you come from? Where did you move from to Scotland?
Yeah, I was born in the south of England, a place called Bournemouth, which is kind of like...
Oh, sure. Is that still your team?
Well, kind of my sort of backup team, because for years they were always in the 4th division.
Yeah.
The Premier League. So,
but they're in the Premiership now. Well, who's your main team?
My main team now is the mighty Manchester United, who aren't unfortunately doing so well these days.
What did you find so addictive like a drug about Los Angeles?
But I don't know if it's Los Angeles or working in the entertainment industry as a designer. I mean, it is just it's always a new project, it's always a new problem to solve, and it's always another huge success or huge failure. like just waiting for you to come and slap you in the face, which is exciting. I mean, and you kind of, the high of going from like a written word on the page to then at the end of the day seeing it in the, on the big screen or with music, with the audience, it's amazing. I mean, there really isn't quite anything like it. And knowing as an artist, originally as an art, not as an artist in Hollywood, as an artist and a painter, it's nice to it's like if a few people see your paintings, that's exciting. So when you're in, Hollywood and you like make a movie and then you get the poster of it and it was like, oh my God, everyone loved it in Japan. They loved it in Taiwan. You're like,
I'm big in Japan.
Everyone saw my stuff and, our stuff. It's always a group thing, but then that's exciting. So then you, it makes you want to do it some more.
You didn't set out though to be in the movies.
No.
Or advertising, which is really where that seems to be that's where the bulk of your work is. And wow, I mean, yeah, we'll talk about, you've done some really fantastic production design on some feature films, but your commercial work is wow. There's so much to talk about there. Very innovative on the digital side too, but like I said, we'll get there.
Yeah, I mean, I weirdly enough, when I was really young, I think I was probably like 9 or something, I saw Jaws. I mean, when I was a kid, we always went to see the James Bond film every year. And that was, I mean, sure, that is still what some of my fondest memories if I think back to my childhood, that was like the real dream, because like James Bond was so iconic.
I think you got the point.
I mean, he was so cool and he traveled the world, and it was like, and none of us were ever going to do that. It was like, and again, at the time, I really feel lucky. I grew up then before the whole internet and everything. So like, if you wanted to look about, what's Tahiti look like, you had to go to the library, get a book out, look at some really shitty pictures. And it was kind of like, but then, so when you watch James Bond, it was like, he had these Sony TVs and it was like, oh my God, he's got these cool cars and he's traveling to all other places. I think that kind of really was actually quite inspirational. And my mum recently showed me, I made this little, I was going to make my own little film, and I drew all the sets when I was like which I'd totally forgotten, when I was about 9 years old for this thing. So, but yeah, no, it's complete accident, really. I thought I was going to be a painter. That's what I wanted. I was an artist.
How did this accident take place?
I had a friend. So when I came to LA, I had that one friend, and then he had other friends. So we sort of became. What did
you think you were going to do or be in LA?
Well, when I first got here, I started making these paintings for a company, and at the time, I mean, I was working illegally, but the guy paid me. He paid me $150 a week, which I thought was like, I mean, it was like getting paid $10,000 a week now. I was like, this is it was like, God,
obviously that's not now. That is not now. What year was it?
And this was 1989.
Okay.
And then and he gave me a car, and he gave me somewhere to live and this huge studio. So I was like, I'm living the dream. So it was great. I just that's what I was doing. And then from being here, and we used to go to clubs all the time. We ended up making friends. I was really young. I was like 22, I think. So made a lot of friends. And one friend had gone to university, and he'd learned how to draft. He was kind of like a like an architect / furniture designer. And at the time, Hollywood was really busy, and they were making the movie Hook, Spielberg's movie Hook. Sure. He had a friend of a friend who said, oh, you know what? We need set designers, and you can draft. So do you want to come down and you could get a job as a set designer on Hook? So he started working on Hook, and we were all like, oh my God, why are you working on, like, I think it was on Sony. Yeah, I think it was a Sony lot. And we're like, which wasn't Sony then. It was, what was it back then? Universal. Columbia. He's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool. And we went on and snuck on at lunchtime and wandered around. I was like, this is amazing. And that was kind of like, and then at the time, I think he was getting paid like $200 a week. And we were like, $200 a week. I'm like, and so we're all like, I was like, I want to do this. This is great. And plus, to be honest, going from the Art Institute, when I was there, I'd studied painting, but I actually, because I had a scholarship, I could study all the undergraduate classes for free. It was all paid for. So I studied photography and computer imaging and what else did I study? film photography. So that was all things that I kind of, so it broadened my experience or knowledge of these different crafts. So I kind of wanted to, after I graduated, I kind of like, I actually want to do something else. I don't necessarily actually just want to sit in a studio painting pictures all by myself. It'd be kind of fun to do something else. And then
you had all kinds of other tools on your tool belt. You
exactly
acquired other kinds of knowledge, and other doors had opened that you could think, well, you could express yourself in those ways.
Exactly. So then I was like, oh, this could be fun to work in film. So, but then we moved back to Italy and England, and I actually started working at RSA, the production company for Ridley Scott in London, which was almost impossible because I mean, it's not so bad now, but the British film industry is so you have to get grandfathered in, really. You have to know someone. And I just kept banging on doors every day, literally bugging everybody. And there was a woman whose name I can't remember, but in the commercial world, everyone knows her. And she was kind of like a tyrant who ran the office at RSA. And somehow I managed to schmooze my way around her, and she gave me a job as a runner. But they only paid, I think they paid like 30 quid a week. And I had 2 kids by then, and we were living in London. There was just, it wasn't sustainable. So my wife's like, you got to get a proper job. So I ended up becoming a teacher for a while. But then then when we came back, then we moved back to America. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this movie thing. So I tried to get a job as an art director, but at the time I couldn't draft. I didn't know how to draft. So I knew people through being here, and they were all like, yeah, you've got the right sort of attitude, I'm sure you could do it, but you need to be able to draft. So I went to UCLA night school, and I learned to draft. And while I was doing that, or actually before I started doing that, I got a job working with Ed Strang, who runs the scenic shop at Warner Brothers. So I got a job painting backings, because that was pre-digital. So we used to paint the backings. So anyone who doesn't know what that is, so when you have a set on stage, it's got windows and doors, and when you look through the window, you got to see something out there. So you can stick trees out there, but it looks a bit silly. So we would paint backings that you put outside the window. So when you're filming on the stage and you look out the window, it looks as though you're in Brooklyn or in a park or wherever you're supposed to be. So we used to hand paint those on these huge canvases in Warner Brothers. So I did that for a while, which I thought was going to be great, but it wasn't. It was really I don't know, it was fun. The Warner Brothers was quite a place back in the 80s. So
I guess it wasn't satisfying.
It was a lot of work, and it was the guys back then, it was kind of sexist, misogynist, kind of a little bit racist. We weren't kind of wearing berets and standing back and checking our work. We were working. Yeah, we got 15 minutes for break, half an hour for lunch, 50 minutes in the afternoon. It was all time carded, and if you didn't stamp that time card on the right time, you were not getting paid. And I was a junior, so my salary wasn't so great, and there are other guys there who are fantastic older guys, and they had like amazing knowledge, and they were earning like a fortune, and I kept like trying to move on up, but it took a long time, and I was like, I can't wait 40 years to move up in this thing. But it is a shame. I mean, it is a shame though, because there's those guys had such amazing skills that are now they're kind of lost, really. It's one of those things that I think in a lot of ways, because they used to know all these perspective tricks and how to paint buildings so they're the right size, and that stuff's and it's not, none of it's really written down. I mean, there's a few of them left, and I still keep in contact with a couple of guys that I worked with back then, but they were real masters. I mean, I learned a lot, and and how to put the paint on the brush. And I mean, you paint these things, and they look like a big lot of brush marks, and then you step back 20 feet and it's like, oh my god, there's the plains of Texas, and they but they actually, right now, there's every once in a while there's a couple of places that still rent them out. JC Backings is one of them, and they still have the original paintings. They still have them, and it's amazing when you go and look at them. They're huge. They're like, some of them are 60 foot wide, 40 foot high, and beautifully all hand painted. Amazing. So,
do you get royalties if these things ever get?
I wish. That
would be fair, wouldn't it? I mean, after all,
should have thought of that. But it was fun, and through that I got exposure to being on. I mean, we would paint, the tiles on the floor of Batman. I painted graffiti for Batman films. I did all kinds of. We do TV shows, films, commercials, anything that came in, we would paint the backings, but we'd also go out and paint stuff. There's actually there's a big wall at Warner Brothers. If you go to Warner Brothers now, it's on I can't remember which lot it is, but one of the back of the stages, and it looks like a Paris street. It looks like a building. It's all Trompe l'oeil. We painted that. I proud to say I was part of painting that. So yeah, it was good fun. But I got to see, but I got exposure to all these other things, and then I was really fortunate that a guy called Paul Silbert, very famous production designer.
Very, very, very famous.
Yeah, was making a movie. Who I didn't know who he was, but they were making a movie. Oh my God, that's gone out of my name now.
To End All Wars.
Yes, To End All Wars. But before that, he was making Conspiracy Theory on the stages at Warner Brothers with Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts, and Dick Donner was the director. And they needed he came into the scenic shop because they needed something to paint, and there was a lamp in the movie where there's a reflection in the lamp, which the guy wakes up from, he's been drugged, and he wakes up and he looks in this metal lamp and sees a reflection of a landmark, and that's where he realizes where he is. But in reality, the reflection would be so small you wouldn't actually be able to see it. So Paul came in and said, "Is there anyone here that could paint this reflection?" And they kind of went, "Oh yeah, just give it to Patrick because he's not doing anything today or whatever. Or give it to me." So I went and did it, and then struck up a conversation with Paul, which was fantastic. And then I ended up making the mural. There's a mural which is central to the film. With his help, I did that, and then he was like, "You should be an art director," and I was like, "Yeah." And then so yeah, it was great. He couldn't hire me in any official capacity because he was already in production and everything else. But he was like, I'll help you out, and he sort of became a mentor, and introduced me to some other people. That was an amazing experience. I was on set, with these movie stars and Dick Donner, and Paul would just be like, "Oh, this is Patrick," and I'd be like, "Yeah, Mel Gibson, hey Patrick." And I was like, "Oh wow, this is pretty cool." And that was before when Mel Gibson was cool. I thought he was cool back then. But yeah,
it came and went.
Yeah, but like literally, Dick Donner was amazing. He would be on set and he knew what he wanted, knew what he was doing, but he would say, "Oh, I was thinking we could do this. What do you guys think?" And Paul would be like, "Oh, I was thinking maybe, they could come through that door or whatever, part of the set." And then Paul would sometimes say, "Well, what do you think, Patrick?" And I'd be like, "Well, don't ask me. Like, I'm nowhere," and sort of thing. And then he'd like, "No, just say what you think." And I'd say something, and Dick would be like, "No, that's a stupid idea. We're not doing that." But sometimes he would say, not my ideas, but it was just such a way of working that he was so confident and not like yelling at everybody and like, fucking this is my idea. I was like, this guy is a man. I mean, what a guy. I mean, it was amazing. It was yeah. And I think and I'm just going to say it there because my wife at the time, unfortunately, we were trying to have a third child, and she had a miscarriage, and I it was really upsetting. And I told Paul, because I want to take the day off, I think, or the afternoon off, or I didn't even know if I did that. I just went into work, but I was miserable. And I told him what happened, and I said, "But you don't need to tell anyone. Just keep it quiet." And then that night, I got home from work, and you couldn't even get in the front door of the house because it was full of flowers from Dick Donner saying, "So sorry, thanks. You're part of the team. We really appreciate your help. If there's anything we can do." And I was like, wow, So I mean, Hollywood's got its shit side, obviously, backstabbing and all that kind of stuff, but it's also got some
there are mentions. There are definite mentions.
And I was like, wow, this guy is so that. Yeah, so I think that kind of stuff, was thinking about it now, kind of made me kind of go, yeah, you know what, there's some cool people out there. And if you get to a position where you can be affecting people's lives or whatever, because you're in sort of that position, you can, and it's in a good way. So that was
did Dick know your name?
I don't know, to be honest with you. Probably not. I mean, he probably wouldn't remember me or anything. It was like,
Dick used to not remember anybody's name, and he called everybody kid.
Yeah, that was it, kid. Hey, kid. And so did Paul. But we'd sit in dailies, and Paul, like you, is super New Yorker. His accent's like, yeah, how you doing? And then we'd be in dailies, because he'd be like, you got to come to dailies. So we'd be in dailies. There'd be literally myself. I think probably like Dick would sit behind us, and maybe Mel Gibson. I don't know who was in there. It was dark, and I'd be sitting next to Paul thinking, oh my God, I can't believe I'm in this room with all these people. Like, I'm a scenic, like, what's going on? And then they'd play the dailies, and Paul would be going, that shot's rubbish. This guy's a hack. I tell you, kid, if I was doing it. And I was just like, oh my God, this is my first job, and it most certainly is going to be my last. I'm never But he was funny. Yeah. Like Paul, we'd walk around the set and Paul's cell phone would ring and he'd get so pissed off because he couldn't quite work out how to work it. It was the beginning days of cell phones. Yeah, good times. Pretty fun. And then Paul didn't really do very many things after that. He was quite old then, and I think, you know, quite cantankerous too. So but then I started doing commercials. That's how I got into doing commercials. From that, and then from doing commercials, I had the one friend that I had that was the set designer, became a production designer, and he did his first film Behind Enemy Lines, and he needed an art director, supervised an art director. So I said I'd do it, not having a clue what I was doing.
But on the job training is
it was some real on the job training. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we were there about a week or something, and we made it in Bratislava, and there was some problem. I can't remember. We didn't have enough money or something. So my friend Nathan Crowley is the designer, who's now Oscar nominated several times, a fantastic designer, and he was saying. He's like, we should write a letter. We should really write a letter to Warner Brothers, telling them, or 20th Century Fox, telling them there's not enough money and this is ridiculous. So I'm like, okay. So I wrote this letter, like, so really stern letter of like, this is ridiculous. No, you need. It's like, a week later, the producer came over and gave me a firm slapping. This is not how you do it. You do not write to the head of the studio, kind of thing. So I was like, oh, okay.
Damn that learning curve.
Yeah, got a severe.
We should have tried that.
Yeah, severe hand slapping for that one. So I was like, oh, okay.
But you survived the learning curve, and you
it's fantastic.
So you were art director on a couple of projects.
Yeah. So I was I did basis, supervising art director on 2 or 3 films, I think, a few films, and then
John Moore is doing Flight of the Phoenix in 2004,
exactly.
and he hires you to be his production designer.
Yeah, which was great. It was a real opportunity, and I leapt at it, so it was great. It was fascinating. We went scouting all over the place, trying to find a desert, and then John was adamant that he wanted to shoot it in Africa. So there's amazing dunes in Namibia, which on one hand, when you're in the dunes, you feel like you're in the Sahara, like a million miles from anywhere, but you're actually only a mile away from the sea. I mean, there is nothing else there. I mean, it's very desolate, and there's not like a lot of vegetation or anything, but the dunes are incredible. They look, you when you're in them, you feel like you're a million miles from anywhere, but they have access. But it was, it was great. It was a real challenge. It was a massive job, massive undertaking, and it was great though. It was really fun. I mean, we really pushed the boat. Guy tried to really push the boat. It's funny, back then I kind of came through the school of working with Nathan, with John, is we just try to do the maximum. Like whatever we did, we just try to make it bigger than anyone thought it could possibly be. Like we build roads to sets that were on the top of mountains. We do anything like just to make it amazing, that you hadn't seen it before, or what we perceived as not being seen before. We just wanted to try and make it as phenomenal. And the same with the flight of the Phoenix. So we shipped 3 planes down there, 3 carcasses. We built another plane out of another plane, tried desperately to make it into a real flying plane that it could actually fly. But unfortunately, it was just too. We couldn't do it. The original, it's a remake, and the original they did make a flying, but the stuntman died doing it. So we wanted not to do that.
I think I'm understanding now a little bit better about why you were always over budget.
Well, weirdly enough, it all changed, because back then you were I probably shouldn't be saying this, but back then it was like the director was God to me. Yeah. So it was like the director said, I want a big battleship. It'd be like, okay, that's what we're doing. And it was like the producer would be like, oh, we can't do that. And I'd be like, no, we're doing it, man. Like, I don't care what you say. He's my boss, not you. So it's like whatever the director said. And then the financial crisis happened, and then it was like, oh. Now it's all like whatever the director, you're like, I don't care what you say, it's whatever the producer says, because he's the one who's going to hire me. So yeah, it was for me, it seemed like it was a real shift. And it was like after the crisis, it was kind of like I'd phone producers up and they'd be like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you. Like, he didn't give me any respect. He just listened to what the director said, and it was like, well, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. So I do actually have one of my favorite Hollywood stories on when we were doing Flight of the Phoenix is we were traveling all over the place trying to find these carcasses of a C-119, which is the Pacific plane that we decided we could use and then reshape and turn into the Phoenix, like the resurrectors of the Phoenix. And so we're scouring all over the place, flying around the world, trying to find these things. And I was flying with a director, so which is great, because when you fly with a director, you get to fly in first class, which is great. So we had this trip. There was a plane. There was one carcass that was just outside of Venice in Italy, not Venice, California. So we were on our way to Venice. And at the last minute, the director was like, you know what? I actually don't want to go to Venice. He's from Ireland. He's like, I'm just going to pop home for the weekend. You can go and look at this plane by yourself. So I was like, okay, well, great. Okay, yeah, fine. So I land in Venice and I think I'm going to go. So they pick me up in a taxi and we drive out to this little town. And as I arrive in the town, literally the whole town is in the village square. And it's like a fete. And they're like, oh, the man from Hollywood, he's here. It was great. It was like at The Godfather. It was amazing. And I had to meet with the mayor, and it was all very exciting. And then they took me off to see this plane, which was just a scrap. I mean, it was like, it was not possible to
and you broke their hearts, didn't you?
So I had to say, well, thanks very much, guys. We'll get right back to you. Let me think about it. And then they're like, well, we'll get you a taxi back to the hotel. So I'm thinking, because we're outside of Venice, we're not in Venice itself, Venice proper, we're just outside in the countryside, that I'm just going to stay in some, shitty hotel because I'm not with the director now. But they take me back to the taxi rank. And in Venice, the taxi ranks are the boats are also called taxis too. So I jump in this taxi boat, which is this beautiful, I can't remember the name of them, but the real fancy Riviera, like beautiful taxi boat. And we take off and we go down the Grand Canal. And then we start, I think it was the Gritti Palace we stayed in, which was like the fanciest hotel. And it was amazing. And the next day, free day in Venice, paid for to stay in this hotel. And turned out to be my birthday. So I woke up on my birthday,
Happy
a free day in Venice,
birthday.
staying at the Gritti Palace. I mean, this is pretty good. Life's pretty good. I've made it. And then I go to leave the hotel to exercise. I go to do a run. And as I come out of my room and the hotel staff are there like, oh, Mr. Lumb, you must come for breakfast. I'm like, okay, thanks. I'm just going out. I'll be right back. And I get downstairs and the elevator guy's like, hey, Mr. Lumb, you must have come for breakfast. I'm like, nah, I'll come later. And then I go downstairs and the guy at the front desk is like, Mr. Lumb, you must stop for breakfast. I'm like, guys, I promise I'll come for breakfast. I just want to leave the hotel. And then I'm getting outdoor the hotel and the doorman's like, oh, Mr. Lumb, you must go for the what is with these people? I'm going for a run. I promise I'll come back for breakfast. I went out for a run, came back, and then the same thing happened. I'm like, okay, I'm going. So I kind of go into this breakfast room, which is this enormous hall, huge in my memory. I mean, beautiful, ornate, most incredible room. And something was like there was no one else in there. I don't know what was going on, and I came in, and then all of a sudden it seemed like the whole staff came in singing happy birthday, and they made a cake. My wife had called secretly and told them it was my birthday. So it was amazing. So I had the whole thing singing happy birthday, and then great. And then the story doesn't end there, because the next day they say, we'll get a taxi to the airport. And I'm like, okay. And I'm thinking I'm going to get a taxi back to the bus stop and get the bus to the airport. But back then, I don't know if you can still do it, but they picked me up in this fancy boat and we're going very slowly down the Grand Canal. And I'm said to the driver, do you think we could go down the Grand Canal just so I could see it one more time, a little bit cheeky? Do you mind if we do like an extra bit? It'll be on the Warner Brothers tab. And he's like, yeah, no problem. So we drive out, and then you get to the lagoon, which is larger. And all of a sudden he turns it, puts the speed on. He's like, sit back, and you're like, and the thing takes off at like 100 miles an hour, full speedboat. And we pull up to the airport, because the airport's on the other side of the bay, and you get out of the boat, walk through the gate, walk across the tarmac, and get on the plane. It was pre 9/11. I was like, wow. I'm like, amazing. And then got on the plane and flew to wherever we went to next, London, I think. But yeah, amazing.
It is such fun traveling on other people's money, isn't it?
Oh my God, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing.
One of the very fine perks. I think there are fewer and fewer of those perks these days.
It's true. I just got back from Prague last week. I did a commercial in Prague, and that was great fun. It was fun it was like going down memory lane too, because I'd done a movie there. So but doing commercials is a whole different world, because they spend money. The advertisers spend money very differently than studios spend money. Very different. Yeah, it's a real money thing. I mean, part of my job on a commercial is managing the money is a huge part of my job, like a huge part. And that's kind of what gets you rehired. I mean, yeah, granted, you do a good job in designing because you can't do a shit job, but it's not like people are like, oh man, that commercial looked amazing, let's get him back. It's more kind of like that commercial looked great, but they also didn't go over budget. So, he's worth hiring again.
Yeah. Now, all right. So you become a production designer, and John gets another gig. He does the Omen, the remake of the Omen, the 2006 Omen.
And I almost unhired myself because I was actually scouting for another film, which ended up not happening, which I'm glad I didn't do in the end. But I was scouting in Puerto Rico, and John called me and he's like, "Great news, man! We got another film." And I'm like, "Oh, what is it?" "Yeah, great, that's great. What is it?" He's like, "It's the Omen, a remake of the Omen." And I was like, "Oh man, can we not do something original? It's another remake." And he was like, "Well, if you don't want to fucking do it," and I was like, "No, that's not what I'm saying."
No sense of humor.
That's not what I'm saying. But it was like, yeah, I was like, "Oh shit." But I mean, great, and it was amazing, so much fun. I mean, horror films, yeah. I mean, you can't go wrong because it's amazing, so much fun.
Did Dick Donner's original?
Funny, yeah, I know. Weird.
Impact you in any way? Yeah.
You know what? I intentionally didn't watch it. Because I mean, I'd seen it obviously, and I remember but the main thing I remember was the from a kid was when the monkeys were all attacking them in the car, and thinking that was absolutely terrifying.
Sure.
No, I kind of intentionally didn't watch it to kind of come at it afresh.
What was your fresh take?
Just to try and make something that was contemporary and really scary. Scary. Bits of it are scary, and we wanted to make it real. I mean, I think one of the trickiest things was we were shooting it in Prague and trying to make it look like London. And back then, CG was so expensive. I mean, I think we have one shot when we're outside and they put the wheel and Big Ben in the background. I mean, there's a couple of scenes where they're at a church. Or there's one big scene at a church, and I mean, you watch it and it's like, well, it's obviously an Eastern European church. It's not, you can tell you're not in England. And so stuff like that, design-wise, is disappointing because you can't do anything about it. However, we did get to build some massive sets, which was really fun, really, really fun. Like the whole interior set where she falls, Julia Charles falls, we literally built a 3-story interior of a mansion. And we went through, on a stage, you have what's called a pit. So you have a stage, it's a big sound stage, and in the middle of the stage, you have a pit, so you can open it up and there's like another floor below, a full floor. So if you need to put a swimming pool in there, or if you need someone to go downstairs or whatever like that. So we took advantage of that to make it even bigger. And then we decided that we wanted to have this pad for her to fall into, and it wasn't deep enough still. So we actually jackhammered out the foundation of the stage, which was pretty cool to put her in. But I'm one of my proud production design moments in that is in the script. There's David Thewlis, who's an amazing actor and such a cool guy to hang out with, really fun, amazing people in that film, and Michael Gambon, who just passed away last week. Yeah, I mean, it was incredible. But David Thewlis' character, he's a photographer, and so one of the themes we thought we would do is we only see red when it's something to do with Damien, when it's something to do with the devil. So so a lot of the film, when you first see it, everything's white, and the only time you see red is when there's something like ominous going to happen or something bad's going to happen. So David Thewlis is a photographer, and he's in his darkroom, and when he's in his darkroom, he turns his red light on. So scripted, he was in this darkroom, and darkrooms, as we all know, are like really small and compact spaces. And I was like, well, that's not going to be very exciting. How can we make that more interesting? So I came up with this idea. I don't know how I came up with the idea. I think I'd seen a book or something. Anyway, I decided to make his darkroom have glass windows. So he had a loft, and then within in his loft, he had this small dark room. But the dark room all had glass windows that you could have blinds on. So he would go in there because he owned the building. That then he could turn the lights on, so you have this red light that would then fill the whole space. So you could have all these ominous shots where you kind of creep into his apartment and seeing this red building, red room with all this red light spraying out, which is kind of really kind of spooky. So that was that was kind of fun to change it around from being like this little space to being a much bigger space, which gave you more character. And it was fun. I at the same time I'd seen this book on David Francis Bacon's a studio, which was this sort of big mess. So we kind of so his loft was kind of like a rip off of Francis Bacon's studio. It had like a mini kitchen in there, and we even drove an E-Type Jag. I mean, not an E-Type Jag, an MG sports car in there, which he drives. So, and we built all that on stage. So that was that was good fun.
You also roundabout then you worked with Chris Nolan on Batman Begins.
Yeah, that was again. So Nathan had gone off and done Batman Begins, and so when how did it work? I can't remember. But anyway, they were making it, and they needed someone to be the supervising art director in America, which was admittedly it was a very small part of the film compared to most of it was done in London. So the supervising art director proper was in London, and they had a lot of work to do. I didn't have too much to do in the end. It was going to be quite big, and then it just got smaller and smaller, what we ended up doing. But yeah, it's great. We did, we built a few sets, and
interesting person to work for. Really,
amazing.
What a visionary.
Yeah, amazing. Really, funny and really nice guy. Very intelligent. Knew what he wanted. Loads of research. Really thorough. I mean, especially for those Batman films, he made all these. He hired all these comic book artists. Like the storyboards are like, I don't know if you can probably get them in books and stuff now, but they're amazing. Like the storyboards were literally like reading a comic strip. And a great team, and his DP's fantastic too. So yeah, that was a great experience, and to work on such a massive scale too. It was funny because and again, it was mainly a London crew, and we did all the stuff. When Chicago, there's Wacker Drive and Lower Wacker Drive, so a lot of we did all the car chase stuff. So a lot of breakaway. So worked a lot with the special effects guys who are all from London, and they're all old Bond people. So the whole Bond story coming around, which is funny. And the guys who work on Bond films, they talk about them in the numbers. So they're all like, yeah, Terry, I was on like Bond 3. I was at Bond 3 or number 4. Oh yeah, well, Bond 7. That's when we blew up the truck, wasn't it? Yeah, that's right, Terry. That's when we done the one with the bank job. Yeah. So it's like hilarious. All these real characters talking about all the old Bond films. It was amazing. So just like, going out for them, having dinner with them and catching up on all this Bond stuff was great. Fantastic. But their experience and knowledge, craftsmanship, amazing. I mean, I didn't work on the second one, but they, when they flipped the tanker going down, I think it was Wacker Drive. I'm not sure which street it was, but they did that for real. I mean, that was a real truck flipping in the middle of an
actual city.
I mean, it's crazy. So, but yeah, it's great. Driving around the tumbler and doing all kinds of stuff, blowing shit up. It was amazing. We built an entrance to a parking lot. It was all, that's one of the fun things of films, of my job as a designer, or our job as designers, is that you get to like make separate places become one place. So you kind of turn a corner and you're in one city, and then you turn another corner and you're actually in another city, but you make it look like you're in the same city. So it's a continuous journey. And we did that a lot with Batman. So there were scenes where they shot in London, and then there's scenes that we shot in Chicago, and it was our job to make these sort of intersections. So one of the things we did, we built a big entrance to a parking garage. And it was great. Chris came round, and Chris was like, "Oh, this is great. I didn't realize there was a parking garage here." I'm like, no, it's a set. And then you look up and you realize there's no like top of it. And he's like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. I thought it was real." So that was kind of fun. He was like, "Oh man, you guys blew me away with that." But you just built like a half a ramp going up into this sort of vanished, and then we didn't build anything else. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, that was one of the fun things in the Omen. We built this. There's one part where the priest is on a journey, and he starts off in Prague, in one part of Prague, and he was in another part of Prague, and he gets on a bridge, and then that was in another city, and then we went to another city, and then he ends up at the cathedral, which was actually in another city. So I think it was like 5 different places that turned into this one, 2-minute walk.
One little walkabout,
which is great.
In 2008 on Valkyrie, you went to work for this guy.
Yeah, amazing.
Now, what happened? How did this come together?
Well, I don't know if Gil was to tell the story. I was a supervising art director. I think I was a supervising art director or one.
Right.
I'm not sure. And yeah, we started the film. We were scouting and doing all kinds of stuff. And then in pre-production, it just wasn't kind of working out. They were not getting along. The director wasn't getting along with the designer.
Who was the original PD?
It was Lily Kilbert. Lily Kilbert was the designer, and I got on great with her. And yeah, I was kind of a right hand man, and we were scouting and doing all kinds of stuff, and just in pre-production. And then it just I know it wasn't working out.
It doesn't, sometimes our creative differences, whatever.
And so they asked.
She just wasn't listening. I mean, we would say to her what we wanted, and then she would say yes, and then she would come back the next day with something that was totally what she wanted and what she thought would be right, but not even listening to what we said. And so we really didn't have a choice. I mean, we were really upset about having to let her go.
I'm sure.
We really didn't have a choice because the director and I looked at each other and said, what are we going to do? We're not getting anything what we want. It's just changing every time we talk to her. So we let her go. And was there. And I remember
they asked me if I would consider doing it. And I was like, oh, maybe. And Lily was obviously really upset. But I decided that, yeah, I would, because why not? It was an opportunity. But I said, I went in, I met with the guys, and I was like, I'll do it, but I'm only going to do it if I do it like my way. I'm not going to, like, this is a fresh start. I'm not just going to continue and do some. And so if you guys are cool with that, then let's do this. And they were like, yeah, let's do it.
But the good news of all this of the story is that, so I met, with Patrick, and he didn't say yes right away. And I'm like, oh God, by Monday, I'm going to be in the toilet looking for somebody in England. And finally he said he would do it. And under the terms that he suggested. And we said, great, let's do it that way. And he was very responsive, and ultimately it was the best thing for the movie, having Patrick on, because it got done really well. And, and it was done properly.
Now this is 1940s Germany. Tom Cruise, playing
Offenberg,
who attempted to assassinate Hitler.
Fascinating. I mean, it was great. We were shooting in Berlin, so obviously there's an intense amount of history there. The German people now have made a real strong decision to get rid of all the stuff, so there isn't anything existing, so you can't just like rock up and shoot in all the existing locations. We did try to find a couple of them. There was the old building, which was the Luftwaffe building, which is now, it's changed a little bit, but that's really the only building that's left standing. We did utilize that. We had to have some CG stuff to remove from it, but that's we did some big street scenes outdoors, which was amazing. But yeah, so we had to really. And then
I don't know if you remember, we had to hang 300 Nazi flags.
Oh my God! Yeah, that was incredible. That was people were stopping.
And so the government. I go to the government for permission, and they go, "No, you can't do that. It's against the law." I'm going, "No, I don't want to hang one Nazi flag. I want to hang 300."
Yeah, it was wild.
No, and finally we got to the right people, and they gave us permission, but they said you have to shoot it on a Sunday. And I'll never forget, one of the things that happened was we had the Nazi flags all up, and we come driving to the set, and it's like, oh God, someone's gonna take a shot at us. And I see this tourist bus with all these Japanese people in the bus, and they're looking and they're waving and they're smiling, and all of a sudden they see the flags and the smiles disappear, and they look in horror, and the bus stops for them to get off because the bus driver said, no, it's a film set, and I'll show you. And so all of these people come off, and they come onto the set before we were shooting. And I had to explain to them what we were doing. I mean, it was hilarious to see their faces change in a minute.
Yeah, it was so ominous seeing all these flags. I mean, it was amazing. Like, you really got the power of them. The iconography. I mean, the Nazis knew what they were doing in all that, the design. And as a design, the interesting thing is they kept such records of everything, photographed everything. So, like, really doing all the research was okay, to recreate stuff. And then we had an amazing set decorator, Bernard, who who unfortunately those guys are so sick of it because everyone comes into town like, hey, we want to make a Nazi film. And it's like, oh Jesus, again. You know, they're kind of like, can we make something else? Like, oh, but yeah, we found all this amazing stuff. Like we actually did some illegal things where we got the real Nazi paraphernalia that collectors have that they're not supposed to have, and we borrowed some stuff from but yeah, but really scary too. Like we recreated Goebbels' office, and that was kind of a fabrication because there's no really records of it, but we just made something that looked big and scary. And
you remember the culmination scene of the movie where we shot that,
the
where Stauffenberg gets assassinated?
yeah, that was a whole thing.
That was originally the war ministry during the war, and now it's a memorial museum.
Yeah, and do you remember what happened? We had to get special permission. I had to go down.
Do I remember what happened? I had to get permission twice, because before we came, part of the deal was we wouldn't come to Germany because we were looking at Prague and we were looking at Budapest. And I said, look, we want it to be authentic, so I want to shoot at the museum, and I want to, replicate it as it were. I'll make sure everything gets put back. And so finally they said, okay, but you can only have it for the weekend.
Yeah.
You have it Friday at 6 o'clock, Monday morning at 9 o'clock. And it has to be like it is when you pick it up at 6 o'clock on Friday. So we shot all weekend.
Yeah, we had to build all the sets and stuff that could come in really fast and come out really quickly as well.
Right. So we set it all up, and then we shot it all out, and we thought, oh my God, we got the end of the movie. It's fantastic.
It was emotional. It was really. I'm just sorry to interrupt. It was really emotional because it was like it was happening.
But then on Tuesday, I got a call from the lab. I don't know if you remember this.
No, I do. I totally remember.
Yeah, saying to me, "I'm really sorry. We destroyed the film." I went, "Well, what do you mean you destroyed the film? Did you overexpose it? Can we rebathe it? Can we do this? Can we?" No. We destroyed. I'm sorry. So we had to make an insurance claim. We always thought that somebody was behind doing this to us. To this day, I think that, because it never happened on any other day.
Yeah.
In our movie or any other movie that I know of, and we're using the main lab there. And so I had to make an insurance claim, but worse than making the insurance claim, I had to go back to all the government agencies that gave us the permission and get permission to reshoot it and reschedule it.
So we did. We went back. Did it again.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy.
From my perspective, we actually Stauffenberg got assassinated twice.
Yeah. But it was funny. It was really emotional. It was like really because we were in the real place, and we made it as authentic as we possibly could. And it was in the middle of the night, and it was cold, and we had like smoke machines and the guns going off. It was scary. It was really scary. It was like, shit, this is what it must have really been like. It was everyone was moved. It was like yeah. But yeah, it was great. It was great. It was a great experience. Fantastic working with everybody, and Tom Cruise is amazing. And at the time, people wanted to dislike Tom. At the time, he's a crazy Scientologist, and he's short, and he wears heels, and doesn't do his real. But he was amazing. And he really knew that. He does not muck about. He's a really intelligent guy, and you had to really know your stuff when he came and asked you a question. Why are we doing this, or why are we doing that? You had to really know what was going on in a good way, and then. But yeah, that was there was one point we were sitting on we were in the house. It was where the sort of resistance were meeting, and I can't remember, something happened, and either Tom got mad or the director got mad, and he's like, right, everybody out. That's why I'm sort of like shuffling out with everybody else, and then like, no, Patrick, you're staying. And it's like, oh shit. So then we're sitting down, and we sit on the sofa, and there's Tom on my side, on one side, and the director on the other side. And we're having this like discussion about the film, and I can kind of see myself looking back at myself going, hey, you're sitting on the sofa with these guys. Like, you're really doing this. Like, you're figuring out, like, you're doing this. This is really happening. You're not that little kid anymore. You're the one who's designing this movie with these, of course, with these guys. And I was like,
huge
wow,
people.
This is cool. This is great. And I was kind of, I kind of like this. I can do this.
What did he want to talk about? Do you remember what he wanted to talk about? Why he got everybody out?
I can't remember now. I can't remember.
Was this in the house?
It was in the house. We were in the house
in Potsdam.
In Potsdam, yeah, and it was something to do with the story.
Well, let me ask you a question. Does this refresh your memory a little bit? Well, I was there on the set, and when and I had extra security, and I had Mossad as security, I guess
Yeah.
you remember. And they called me to the front of the building, and they said there's an elderly woman with a young woman. The elderly woman has a cane, and she's saying she needs to speak to the man in charge. The man in charge.
Oh, you know what?
So I went outside, and this woman, sweating, very heavy, must have been in her 80s, says, "I need to speak to the man in charge." And I said, "I'm the man in charge. What can I do for you?" And she said, "How did you know? How did you get this house? How did you get this house? I need to talk to you." And so it was a very hot day, and I realized she wasn't a threat. I made sure that we checked her cane, and I looked at the daughter or the granddaughter, and we went into the house, which was cooler. And she sat on a chair, and I sat on the couch. Now, when I sit on a couch, I usually sit with my back on the arm, not on the back. Just, I don't know why. And so I sat like that. And as soon as I did, she said, "Why do you sit like that? Why do you sit like that? He sat like that. He sat like that. He sat exactly like that with your leg crossed like that." And I'm like, what is she talking about? This woman's out of her mind. Well, it turns out this was her house. And her husband was part of the resistance. And they would meet in this house. And she looks at the house, and she says to me, "You see those glass doors? Why are they closed? Open them." And there was a difference between the living room and the dining room with these big glass doors. And so I didn't even realize they were movable. She separates them. And I'm like, don't touch that. Don't touch that. You mean there's a set? No. Yeah. And then she sits down again, and she says to me, "How? I'll show you." And she starts walking upstairs, and Tom was shooting upstairs, and I didn't want her to go upstairs. So I said, "Please don't go upstairs. Please ask her not to go upstairs." And she takes like 4 steps up the stairs, and it's like a craftsman house with these thick wooden steps. And she takes her cane, and she hits the metal platform on the wall. And she says, in there, that's where they hid the bomb. And I'm like, what is she talking about? And so it was all true. Yeah. And she finally looks at me and says, after she calms down a little bit, and I tell her we're making a movie, she said, "Is there any way I can meet Tom Cruise?" This 80-year-old woman. So my initial reaction was saying, "Oh, no." And then I thought about it for a second. I said, I think Tom would really appreciate this story. He's not going to believe it, that we're in the actual house. So I went up to the set, and I told him, and he said, "You think she's real?" And I said, "I do. I really think she's real." He said, I got to check this out. And he came down, and she was all tickled that she met Tom Cruise. And sure enough, it all was true.
Yeah, amazing.
We were in that house. And of all the houses we looked at, because we looked at about a half a dozen houses.
Yeah.
And we picked this one. Why we picked this one, who knows? But I mean, that was the house.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much history there. I mean, it is amazing when you're wandering around and, the places you saw. One of the things we were scouting, I don't know if you were on that scout, Gil, we're out in this village outside of Berlin. I can't remember, like a couple of hours outside. And it was looked like a regular sort of village. And then we went into one of the houses, opened the door, went through the bedroom, went through the other bedroom, and then down through the closet. And it was the entrance to this whole underworld where there was a huge elevator, and there was like rooms and things. And it was like a whole sort of like bunker for the Nazis. So if anything happened, they could all go down there and stay under this whole secret world that was still there. I mean, nothing was in any of the rooms, but it was, but staircases and corridors and room after room, all built out of concrete. Crazy.
It's like the ending imagined in Dr. Strangelove, the ultimate bunker of doom.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like hidden in this little village in one of the houses. You kind of went through the crazy.
I remember going in Potsdam to the house where Stauffenberg lived.
Yeah.
And now it has been ripped apart a little bit and made into 3 or 4 condos from this one big, beautiful house. And I remember the only thing that I was told was left from the original house was the metal railing all around the house.
Yeah.
I remember opening up the gate and holding on to the gate just to feel the vibration, because I certainly felt something.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing experience.
Yeah. I mean, shot at the airport there. The airport was incredible, which his name has gone out of my head right now, but it's huge. It's no longer used as an airport. Now it's kind of like a big theme park. Actually, since we've shot there.
Really?
Now it's a big theme park. They kind of reused it. But yeah, I mean, amazing. Really. And then the actors were incredible. And yeah.
And you had to find those tarmacs, one on grass and one on macadam.
Yeah. Yeah, great. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, so much fun doing all the research and then finding all the old vehicles and yeah, amazing. Yeah,
And then I don't know if you remember the first day of shooting, we were shooting on the tarmac with the old planes, which are costing me a fortune to rent. And I get a call from the set saying, we can't shoot today. And I go, what do you mean we can't shoot today? The tarmac melted.
oh, that's why it's so hot.
And the wind and the wheels are stuck to the tarmac. So we can't use the planes. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
We're shooting today.
Yeah.
Gotta figure this out. And so we brought in blowers and I think ice machines to make the tires diminish in size and get them unhooked from the tarmac. And we were able to shoot.
Wow.
I'll never forget the first day of shooting. I thought we got it all set. Everything's
That's
covered.
always the way it is.
And then
There's
they
always
call me,
something that you
yeah,
could
and
like
then they call me
somehow.
and they go, we can't shoot. The tarmac is melted and the wheels are stuck.
Yeah, you just don't expect the ground to melt on your first day of shooting.
Right.
Yeah. When we made the Omen, we were shooting because it just reminded me of being in Prague last week. We built this big set on the back lot. And in Prague, it never snows. Like it never snows because it's like a low climate. Of course, the year we're there, it snowed. So we have this set that's supposed to be Jerusalem, and we're like digging out the snow and 5 torches trying to melt all the snow. So you look one way, and it looks like Jerusalem with lights on it, and there's stone buildings and stuff. But if you turn, like you move the camera like 45 degrees, and you see this snowy Eastern European landscape with this little set in the middle of it. What kind of thing?
Smoke, meat, mirrors.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You went on to work for Michael Mann on Public Enemies, another terrific, really director to work with and for.
Yeah. He's a machine. I mean, he's the loveliest man before you start shooting. And then he's so demanding. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, that's why he gets good stuff. I mean, he is but he's relentless. Like you'll be shooting and he wants to shoot where there's a fire hydrant, and you'd be like, Michael, we just can't move the fire. I mean, it's a fire hydrant. We can't move it. He's like, I don't give a fuck. Well, that's where we're shooting it. Figure it out. And you'd be like, yeah, no, we'll do everything, because like my mantra is no is not an answer. Like no is not an option.
Right.
That's literally no is not an option. But then with Mike, you'd be like, but yeah, Michael, I totally get it, but it is a fire hydrant and we're in the middle of Chicago. And he's like, I did you not hear me the first time? I don't give a fuck. Like figure it out. Like, oh my god, he's relentless. But that's how he gets, that's what he gets. And the DP was amazing. Dante Frey was amazing. Danny Spinotti, excuse me.
Yeah, Danny Spinotti. Yeah.
Danny Spinotti, who I'm still friends with. Amazing. But it was interesting because we shot it in digital, which was everyone was like, "Oh, don't do it in digital because it's going to look like shit." And bits of it don't look as great as they could because it was Michael was pushing the boundaries of stuff. But yeah, I mean, again, it was a real experience, a real learning experience, going back and trying to recreate things. We had to lay, I can't even remember how many yards of fake cobblestones on all these streets to make it just stuff you don't think about. Yeah, and painting everything in all these earthen colors, and yeah, great. It was a tricky one because there just was never quite the chemistry between Johnny and the lead. So that I mean, that it's not. I don't think it's a good film. Unfortunately, it's. I mean, I think it looks great, but yeah, it didn't. I don't know. Somehow it didn't live up to its thing. And Johnny didn't get on with Michael. They were the odds from the get go, which doesn't help. So yeah, it's disappointing. And in a way, that's for me. That's one of when I kind of started doing commercials. That's the nice thing about a commercial is like you put all your heart and soul into it. It's all over in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And then if it's crap, it's kind of like, oh well, whatever. I tried my best. But like with movies, I mean, I lived. I mean, it's my whole life. I'm like, it's like having a child. I mean, that's an exaggeration, but you put your whole heart and soul into it, and then
it is your baby. I mean, you're imagining a world that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and then sometimes it just at the end of the day, like someone comes along and says, "Oh no, let's change the ending, or let's do this," and you're just like, "Oh my god, I can't believe I put all that energy into this," and it just like, I mean, it was a Flight of the Phoenix was a thing because it was. I mean, it was a great. There's some cheesy bits in it because they thought it'd be great to have a pop star in it and put a pop song halfway through the film, and then someone wanted to have an ending where someone died too soon or didn't die fast enough, so they kind of started fucking around with it once we've made it. and it's just so disheartening because you watch it now and you're just like, oh. And then when it came out, they just weren't quite sure what to do with it. So they weren't sure whether to make it an action film or whether to make it a family film or whether to do so. It came out right before Christmas, but they just kind of all of a sudden the week before it came in, they kind of dropped the ball and didn't really do any advertising for it. So it didn't. It just kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit. I mean, I'm happy to say people love it, and everyone seems to watch it on telly now, and people are like, oh, watch it every year at Christmas, which is lovely. But at the time, it was like, oh my God, what happened? Like they didn't know how to release it, and it just kind of was like, oh shit, which is so disheartening because you put all your heart and soul into this thing, and then it's out of control. And the same old designer complaints is the one the best set gets cut because the scene doesn't work, or stupid actor goes and stands right in front of the set.
bloody actors. You also did the 2010 Nightmare on Elm Street, which was
that was really fun. But disappointing for those same reasons is that the director, I kind of didn't want to do another horror film, and I was like, I kind of wanted to do sort of serious films and bigger films and whatever. But I'd met with the director and I knew his work, Sam Bayer. He's was a huge commercial director and music video director, a real visionary, and amazing work. And so I met with him, and we kind of came up with all these ideas we could do for the film, and kind of not change the genre because that sounds ridiculous, but we just really wanted to make it visually amazing.
It's gorgeous. It is. Well, look, the original had a budget of 1.8 million. You guys had 35 million bucks to play with. That makes a huge difference. It is an extraordinary looking world, and plus, on the new Freddy, they were able to use a little bit of digital application to heighten the effect. So the technology had changed to allow you all greater creative latitude.
It's funny. And it's funny because I did watch the original. I remember watching the original. I remember going to the movie theater to watch it because I was in college in Cornwall in England. I remember going to see it with friends, and I remember coming out and we're just all being terrified. And there's a scene, I think it's Johnny Depp gets sucked in the bed in the mattress. And I remember being absolutely terrifying. And then if you watch it now, it just looks so stupid. It's like, okay, so they cut a hole in the mattress and dropped him. I mean, it's like you watch it now, it's comical how poor man's process it's done. I mean, it's not in a fraction believable. I mean, and I remember that scene specifically being like, oh my God, it was so scary how they do that. And then we watched it when we went to make the film, and I was like, oh my God, that was like crazy. I mean, so different.
They had a chance to dig deeper into Freddy, and there was I guess they had shot it. There was in the script, there were 15 different scripts, but one of the versions had Freddy was actually empathetic, and they turn him into a monster. He's not a monster. He's not doing anything to the kids, which would have been that would have made him so much more interesting because he was in a way justified in the beginning. It would have made him so much more interesting. That would have been a great innovation. It might have given them a little bit more.
Because he gets chased by the parents unjustly. If I remember, he gets chased by the parents unjustly, and they kind of set him on fire, which is why he's all. But the question is, all right. So he had this thing with the kids after school, and the parents catch him at it. But in one version, in one of the scripts, he wasn't. He was innocent.
It's innocent. It's quite innocent, and
which is great. That would have been,
wow, that would have been what a great twist into the whole Freddy mythology, that he's an innocent guy. There's something deep, almost empathetic at the core.
No, totally. And that was one of the things that was like after we finished it, it was like the guys who made it, great guys, but they make this like horror porn or whatever you call it. And I went to see one of the after I took the job, and we knew we were doing the job. They had another film, Friday the 13th, coming out, like a remake, and I was like, I'll go and see this. And it was just, I was like, oh my God, I can't, like, I wouldn't get my high horse, but I was like, this is sort of morally reprehensible. It's just like people like shooting each other, and and then I think at one point some guy sticks a screwdriver through someone's head or something. I was in the movies, and everyone in the movies like, yeah, this is awesome, and I'm just going, oh my god, this is what's happened to society. Like this is, I mean, I'm sure I'm being a huge hypocrite here in some ways, but it was like so we didn't want to make like a horror porn. Like I at one point I was offered to make the Saw 2 or 3 or 15 maybe they make, and I was just like, I don't want to do it. I'm not. So that kind of what happened with Nightmare on Elm Street. We kind of made it, and then we did a bunch of reshoots. We had to rebuild, similar to I had experience from Valkyries, to rebuild sets. One of the basement, I think we rebuilt it 3 times in different locations. And it all looks the same, but yeah, I think it was a real location, and then we rebuilt it, and then we rebuilt it in Chicago, then we rebuilt it twice in LA to do reshoots.
Well, it's great looking, yeah, and if you're going to hire a whole new Freddy, hey, Jackie Earl Haley, it's a thankless task,
Yeah.
but if you're going to hire a new Freddy, open another door, make it worthwhile, because then Jackie Earl Haley at least has something that he did that Robert Englund had never done.
Yeah, he was amazing.
Thankless task, thankless.
And then that she was going to be something special. I mean, that was her first, I think that was her first film, and she was incredible. But yeah, that was fun. She goes in her bedroom. We made it snow in her bedroom. That was kind of fun, like a crazy trippy thing. So
you did a couple other features after that, but really the more interesting work, that the assignments you were getting was in advertising, and there's some stuff on your portfolio that's just the Prius LED installation.
Oh yeah, that was amazing.
That is way cool. We will put that up so that people can watch that as we're listening. We'll link to it. It is so cool. And what's also cool, and we'll also link to your website, because you show all your work. There's
great.
You have all the schematics. You have that
was a real fun project. So they came out with a new Prius. I'll try and make it brief, but they came out with a new Prius, and the whole idea was they wanted to show that it was streamlined. So I didn't come up with the ideas of the advertising agency comes like that, and they said, but what we want to do is we want to get a Prius, we want to stick it in an air tunnel, wind tunnel, that they use for real, that then they blow air on, and you can see the way the air goes because they blow white smoke, and you can see
right.
aerodynamic it is. Well, we're like, okay, great. So can you do that? I'm like, yeah, no problem. We'll figure it out. So then we call around a bunch of places. So there's some wind tunnels that do not exist. There's like 3 of them. There's one in somewhere in Heidelberg or something. And there's like, they're just, and they're astronomical to use because they're crazy scientifically built. So everyone's like, well, you just can't do it. So then I have this amazing special effects company. And of course, their name has gone out of my head right now. I knew this was going to happen. But, and they like, we can figure it out. Let's figure it out. So we built our own mini wind tunnel. It's a real wind tunnel we built.
So you had to build your own wind tunnel. Okay.
We built our own wind tunnel. So we put all these cones to get the air to dry, because it's really complicated. So it's like, that's one commercial somehow really fun, because there's always different projects. You have to learn all this stuff. So we learned how to make a wind tunnel. So I learned how to make a wind tunnel. We have these straighteners. So you straighten the air, and instead of blowing the air in, we suck the air out at the other end. And then what we had to do, we had to figure out how to get smoke. So the original, it was a commercial, and this guy comes in, a famous pianist comes in, and he plays a tune, and as he plays a tune, it pumps different colored smoke out in the wind tunnel, which then goes over the top of the car. So we wanted to do it all in camera rather than just doing it in CG. And it was a real rush, but we figured out how to make this piano, and with the special effects guys who were amazing, we got this canned smoke and compressed smoke, and when you press the button, it really did. You hit a note and it made the key, and it came out and it blew and it went over the car, and they loved it so much that they were like, okay, we want to do something like this, but we want to do it as an installation. This was probably like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe less. I'm not sure, but it kind of became this new thing in advertising, where rather than making advertisements, you made environments. You make experiential, right, so people can actually visit them, walk through them. Like the whole, and then everyone takes Instagram of it, and that becomes more advertising. More people see it than if it's a commercial. People super responded to it. It was great, and it's really nice because, I mean, obviously it's nice when you make commercials or movies. You're on set. and everyone gets a buzz when everyone's there because everyone's worked so hard to get it, and it happens, but it's over and it's briefly, or then you keep repeating it on a commercial and everyone's like, oh, this isn't funny anymore. It's like, but when you did this thing, the general public were coming in and wandering around it and hearing the music and seeing it and just seeing people's faces, and kids' faces are like, wow, this is so cool. It's like, yeah, great.
Another experiential installation you did was the one you did for Uber, which is also very cool. The lights.
Yeah, that was great, and that is probably one of my ultimate worst experience of making an installation or a commercial. Damn. So we built these things, which I was very proud of, with this amazing company here in Los Angeles, who kind of make technical things. We actually did a few other projects which didn't quite make it. We tried to do this thing with God, I forgot what it's called, magnetic oil. So we were trying to make clocks out of magnetic, all these kind of crazy things I've done with this company, who are like, they're all scientists, they're all sort of science buffs, but then we make visual things as well. So we made this thing for Prius, which was amazing. And all these lights, as you walk around, they change color and they get brighter and change. And it was like mirrors, and it was like an art installation. I was so proud of it and so excited to make it. It's like, and that's another thing, like one of my jobs is that you know, I'm an artist, I'm an architect, I'm a painter, it's all these interior design. It's great. So this was like an art installation. And then we made the whole thing. It was going to Miami. So the whole idea was we set it up in Miami. We built them all. It's beautiful. It's all like precision built and computerized and everything else. And it goes on a base. And then the people come in and you walk up to it. And as you walk up to it, it changes color. It's interactive. So it's almost like a Stonehenge of lights that colors. And so we got to Miami, and we had a day to install it. And the installers were supposed to come at 9 a.m. And a whole team of people to build this in a parking lot to make it flat, beautiful, rock solid surface, shiny, reflective, so it'd be gorgeous, like a rock and roll stage floor. Amazing. So at 10 o'clock, no one's turned up. So I'm phoning, I'm going, where are these people? Where's the installers? Like, what's happening? I'm freaking out. Everyone's going to be here at 5 o'clock. It's going live. 10:30, one truck comes up with jalopy with two guys in it and half a dozen like pieces of 2x4 and a couple of pieces of plywood. And I'm like, well, what's going on? They're like, yeah, we're here to build a platform. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, platform's like 12 by 12, right? In the parking lot, it's supposed to be something. Like, what's going on? We don't really know what's happening. We just got told to come over here. And I was like, ah! So I was like, they're freaking out. And I just, calling everybody and trying to, because the company in LA had just called a company here, so subcontracted it out and hadn't really chucked it out and followed through them. So literally at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm on my hands and knees with a nail gun and a screw gun trying to screw bits of plywood down, and then I'm painting the roller. God. The agencies show up, the client shows up, Uber bosses are all there, and I'm literally in my suit, like rolling blacking paint around the place with dryers, trying to get it to dry before everyone shows up. And then we kind of pulled it off, but the floor was still, as you walked on the floor, it kind of the pieces moved a little bit, which wasn't supposed to happen. But yeah. And I just nothing you can do. Like, the show's got to go on. We had a day to do it, and it was but awful. I was so
how not to make an advertisement.
How not to make an out. I was so humiliating. Just and Miami, it's August, it's like 110 degrees. I'm like just literally ball of sweat with a screw gun trying to fix this thing with in
your nice clothes.
Just awful. Absolutely awful. And then the next day we were supposed to reinstall it at another location, and there was a what do you call it, cyclone, so impossible, couldn't do it, which actually was kind of get out of jail because we couldn't find anyone else to build another platform. But yeah, solely. I mean, you kind of on the website you can see the preparation.
Oh yeah. And you've done so many cool parts of so many cool spots. The progressive motorbike man, motorcycle man. The MOTAUR, that is such a cool.
I think they've killed him, which is a shame. We were hoping it was going to be a thing that kept going and going. We've done a few
spots, and also we're part of some of the great Geico spots.
Yeah, they're great. I work with an amazing director, Harold Einstein, and he's amazing, and he's fantastic to work with, fantastic talent, and so all of that, I'm just his hands really.
I'm a news junkie, so I watch. I see a lot of the insurance commercials. A lot of your work I see all the time. Also the Liberty Mutual commercials, which frankly I think are stupid as fuck. I mean, brilliant as Geico is, as brilliant as Progressive is, man, someone is running the
it's so funny because it's so dumb. We did a few of them. Like one, I think we did 2 batches of them, and then Harold's like, I'm just not doing it anymore. The director's like, I'm not doing it anymore. But they keep the set and they pull the set out. It's our set, my set, or whatever, that they pull out. They own it and they pull it out for all, and then they come out. And every once in a while, every couple of years, they go, Harold, like the director, will you come back and do some more? He's like, nah, they're not funny.
What's cool about your website is that you have that set. Yeah. I see how that set is constructed. It really is very cool. It's which is why your website, your portfolio is so interesting to wander around.
Oh, great. Yeah, I like to try and show how we do it.
I highly recommend that, and it gives such insight into your working process, as you have given us in this incredible sit down that you had with Gil and I cannot thank you enough for spending this time with us today.
No, my pleasure. Yeah, Gil's a mensch. He's my main man. He's helped me out a lot. So yeah, big love to him and his
as you have me on Valkyrie.
So yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure was ours, Patrick, and we look forward to having another conversation, because we just scratched